I want to thank the countries that helped me put this together: Qatar, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, and so many others. So many people fought so hard. This is a big day. We'll see how it all turns out. We have to get the final word down in concrete. Very importantly, I look forward to having the hostages come home to their parents and having some of the hostages, unfortunately, you know the condition they're in, come home likewise to their parents, because their parents wanted them just as much as though that young man or young woman were alive. So I just want to let you know that this is a very special day, maybe unprecedented in many ways. It is unprecedented, but thank you all, and thank you all to those great countries that helped. We were given a tremendous amount of help. Everybody was unified in wanting this war to end and seeing peace in the Middle East, and we're very close to achieving that. Thank you all, and everybody will be treated fairly.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about President Trump, who appears to want to be the president of peace, right? He's attempting to be the president of peace. Now, again, how it actually goes, right? Who knows, okay? Because President Trump has been trying to end some of these conflicts that we're stuck with from the Biden administration, namely Ukraine and Russia and Israel and Gaza. Now, we've talked about Ukraine and Russia, and it doesn't look like that peace process is going too well. But like I try to tell you guys, you got to judge based off if there's a legitimate effort to obtain peace, right? Is the administration actually putting in a legitimate good faith effort to achieve peace? Biden didn't do that with Ukraine and Russia, okay? They wanted Ukraine to continue to fight Russia. Apparently there was an opportunity early on to get some peace. They said, no, Ukraine, keep fighting, right? President Trump has legitimately tried to broker peace between Ukraine and Russia. At this point, who knows? They may just fight it out. But President Trump has tried. And he's also trying when it comes to Israel and Hamas/Gaza, the most annoying conflict in human history. It looks as if we may or may not be on the verge of a peace agreement in which Hamas is agreeing to release all of the hostages and to potentially give up control of leadership to a neutral international governing body and to hopefully turn Gaza into a habitable place, right? I mean, I think ultimately today it's going to have to be an international city, okay? I think that the sweet spot, and I hope that the Israelis actually agree to this, they actually put in a good faith effort to allow this to happen, which, you know, who knows at this point, is for that whole strip, right, the Gaza Strip, to be governed by an international entity, in the sense that there may be Palestinian leadership, but there's international oversight. Basically, the international community monitors and babysits the Palestinian leadership. Again, Palestinian leadership that's not Hamas, that's, you know, neutral, you know, they're civil servants, right? You know, engineers, doctors, lawyers, vetted Palestinian leadership, right? That, again, is overseen by an international authority. That is probably the sweet spot, because it's not going to be a state, okay? And, you know, Israel taking over the whole thing, you know, wiping out the Palestinians, that may be too costly, right, politically for them, okay? So I don't know. I just think that at this point, it being under international control may be the sweet spot, and that looks like the type of deal that the Trump administration is trying to broker, okay? So with that being said, for whatever reason, liberals are in major cope mode over this, right? They don't really like this news too much, even though they claim that they care about the Palestinians so much. But because President Trump here appears to be getting a victory, they just have a hard time. They have a hard time acknowledging that, hey, you know, maybe we should give the president some props for this.
I think this has been a gamble from the very beginning, but this thing is not going to end overnight. It's going to be in stages, and the first big stage is going to be, are you going to release all the hostages, and can we get the bombs to stop falling? And if President Trump is able to do this, it's a major victory for him.
Look, it is challenging to actually hear that piece of, Trump potentially being the one to get the ceasefire deal. But I think what we are seeing now is that a lot of people are tired of the devastation that's happening to the Palestinian people. And so how do we figure out a path forward? And so I would be interested to understand President Trump's interest in this, because he has said some things that are very harmful to the Palestinian people. I don't know, what his motivations are.
He wants the war to end. I mean, he
wants
the war.
the hostages back.
He wants.
That's what he wants.
I don't
He
think
wants
that's
the war to end for a lot of reasons. Some of them are personal reasons. He wants that Nobel Peace Prize. Some of them are that I do think that whatever you think of Trump, he does not like the idea of all the death and destruction. But here's one more piece to this. The public opinion polling over the last few months has shown a very clear shift away from Israel. The unfavorable view of Israel is now at 53% among U.S. adults. And if you break that down by party, it has increased by 10% among Republicans and Republican-leaning voters between 2022 and 2025. So that shift is happening. At the same time that Trump is very aware that his base, especially younger Republicans, are getting frustrated, not just with Hamas, but also with Israel as well.
This is not a political issue. Look, President Trump has been clear from the beginning. He wants the hostages back. When he took office back in January, they had an initial deal to get some hostages. A few were released. Then Hamas reneged on that deal then. He's been clear from the beginning. I just want these people back. The people who are alive, we pray that they're still alive. The remains that exist. It all needs to happen, and it needs to happen quickly. And that's what I'm actually, look, I've worn this pin every night, just about since October the 7th, because the hostages is what I really care about. And we seem to be on the brink of maybe the possibility that they get out of the Gaza terror tunnels. If that's true, I'll pray for it to be true every minute until it happens. I want to know how long they're going to give Hamas to keep up this deal. Like Hamas has said, we want to enter into negotiations to talk about releasing. How long are we going to let that go on? I don't want to be strung along by these terrorists. I want the hostages. That's what the president wants, and I don't want him to give them very much time because they don't deserve it, and these people need to come home. We're almost 2 years into this.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that. That is CNN getting choked up, right? You see how hard it is for them to acknowledge that, damn, if Trump gets them to stop fighting and the hostages actually are returned, wow, it's going to be a victory for him, right? Well, why is he doing this for the Palestinians, right? It's like, well, maybe, just maybe, he wants peace, right? Maybe he just doesn't like to see the bloodshed, right? Maybe he's a good person. Like, I mean, who wants to continue to see this conflict? I don't want to see it, right? Again, it's the most annoying conflict in history. I wish that it would end, okay? I wish that it would end. So, hopefully it comes to an end and we never have to talk about this again. I mean, we will, because, likely they will be fighting again. But let's just hope for the best outcome in this situation, which, again, I believe the Palestinians will have to be governed by some type of international governing body, right? And I know the liberals, the left, they're probably going to boo-hoo whine and cry about that. Well, they deserve to be able to decide whether or not they want to have their own state. And it's like, no. That's realistically just not going to happen, right? The Israelis are never going to allow the Palestinians to have their own state on their borders. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And I think when people realize and understand that, you understand, all right, if you actually really want peace, right? If you want to give the Israelis less of an excuse to continue to essentially take all the land, right, outright, then, again, you might want to just take what you can get, right? Which, if again, Gaza can be under control of the international community rather than under the control of Hamas, right? And that makes Israel sleep better at night, okay? Then, hey, that might be the best answer, okay? That might be the best answer to stop the bloodshed. So, with that being said, I want to react to Marco Rubio, Big Marco, on NBC.
Terry Rubio, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thank you.
Well, I want to start with these peace negotiations in the Middle East. Is this now the end of the war in Gaza?
Well, not yet. There's some work remains to be done, and I would view it in two phases in terms of understanding how to break this out. The first piece of it, which was very clear from the letter and Hamas's response, is they have agreed to the president's hostage release framework. And what needs to happen now, and they acknowledge in the letter in their response, is there now needs to be meetings, which are occurring even as I speak to you now, and hopefully will be finalized very quickly on the logistics of that. What that means is, who goes in to get them? Is it Red Cross? When do they show up, et cetera? What place are they going to be? And the conditions have to be created for that to happen. You can't have bombs going off and fighting going on in the middle of this exchange. So that's piece one. The second, and we want to see that happen as soon as possible. All 48 hostages, both living and deceased, and there's some need to be released. And there's some logistical challenges to that we'll have to work through. But that work is happening even as I speak to you this very moment. The second part of it's even harder, and that is the long-term piece. What happens after Israel pulls back to the yellow line and potentially beyond that as this thing develops? How do you create this Palestinian technocratic leadership that's not Hamas, that's not terrorists, and with the help of the international community? How do you disarm any sort of terrorist groups that are going to be building tunnels and conducting attacks against Israel? How do you get them to demobilize? All that work, that's going to be hard, but that's critical, because without that, you're not going to have lasting peace. You may get the hostages back, you may get a cessation of hostilities, but in the long term, it's going to happen all over again. So both are going on at the same time, but priority number one, the one that we think we can achieve something very quickly on, hopefully, is the release of all of the hostages in exchange for Israel moving back to that yellow line, which is basically where they stood at the middle part of last month, of August. And that's the one we're focused on. Even as I speak to you now, there are people meeting on that.
I want to drill down on the timing of the hostages in just a moment. But first, just big picture. President Trump seems to be taking Hamas's response as a yes to his peace proposal. As you've indicated, though, there's a lot that still needs to be worked out. Hamas didn't mention laying down its arms, for example. Do you see Hamas's response as a yes to President Trump's peace proposal?
Well, it's certainly a yes to at least, look, it's Hamas, okay? So I'm not telling you here that these are people I trust 100%, nor should we, but they have said, basically, that they agreed to his proposal and the framework for releasing the hostages. That's an enormous achievement. They've also agreed, in principle and generalities, to enter into this idea about what's going to happen afterwards, the Palestinian technocrats, et cetera. There's a lot of details that are going to have to be worked out there. But look, this is a plan that the president put forward. But let's remember, it has the strong support of the UAE, of Qatar, of Egypt, of Saudi Arabia, the Turks, Indonesia, all these others. So there's a lot of international pressure on Hamas to make this happen, and we're going to need them and the European Union, and countries from around the world to also participate in making this thing work. So that second phase, the phase you're discussing, the disarmament, demobilization, that's not going to be easy. That's going to be hard, but it is really important, because without demobilization, you're not going to have a lasting peace. A lot of work has to happen there, and we acknowledge that, and we want it to work out, and we're going to do everything we can to make it work.
Prime Minister Netanyahu has indicated he expects the hostages to be released as soon as this week. Is that your expectation, that the hostages will be released this coming week, Mr. Secretary?
Bro, why she be yelling at this man? She's so pointed. Why you got to be so pointed with that question? I mean, this is the closest that we've gotten to a peace agreement. And for whatever reason, again, the mainstream media doesn't seem to like it. I mean, it's very fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I would like the hostages to have been released yesterday. Now, we need to work through the logistics of how that's going to happen. I mean, and again, that sounds simplistic, but it's not just about, you got to make sure that there's no fighting going on. You have to make sure the Red Cross can get there, what time they're going to be there, where they're going to be. All of that has to be worked through, and that's not easy in the middle of an active war zone. That has to be de-escalated, and that's exactly what they're meeting about right now. I mean, that's what the talks are about. That's what the high-level talks are going to be in Cairo tomorrow.
Mr. Secretary, they could be released this week?
Our expectation, yeah. We want it to be as soon as possible. There's no doubt about it. We want it as soon as possible. It needs to happen as quickly as possible. And we will know very quickly whether Hamas is serious or not by how these technical talks go in terms of the logistics. But absolutely, we want these hostages, all of them, living and deceased, released as soon as possible.
Let me ask you about Israel's role in this. Israel has not agreed to fully withdraw from Gaza. What is the time frame by which the United States wants to see that happen? Are we talking weeks, months, years?
No, listen, so first of all, they have agreed, and that's part of the release, to move back to the yellow line, which is what they've called it. It's basically where Israel stood in the middle of August. And so that they've agreed to that piece. And I think ultimately everyone has agreed, including Israel, that eventually at some point here, as this process plays out, Gaza will be governed by a Palestinian technocratic group that's not Hamas, that are not terrorists, with the help and the assistance and the guidance of an international consortium like the Board of Peace, et cetera. That is the goal. Everyone who signed on to this agreement
What's the time
has
frame,
agreed
though,
to.
Mr.
Now,
Secretary?
but in
Weeks,
order,
months, years?
Well, that'll take, yeah, no, in terms of, I mean, yeah, you can't set up a governance structure in Gaza that's not Hamas in 3 days. I mean, it takes some time. And when we ask Israel, okay, you're at the yellow line, now everything behind it, you have to turn it over. You have to have somebody to turn it over to. So, I mean, let's be realistic here. You can't just set up a sort of new governance structure inside of Gaza in 72 hours. It's going to take some time to do it. The important thing is that there's a plan, it's being executed, it has the money, it has the support, it has the expertise, and that it's moving forward, and everyone has agreed to the parameters of it. But that is ultimately the goal here, that everyone who signed on to President Trump's deal has agreed to.
Mr.
Yeah, bruh, I love Marco Rubio, right? Like the new Marco, big Marco, okay, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, I can see him as president, right? Real talk, okay? Guys like him, I think Ron DeSantis, guys that are like executors, right? These are people I'm like, all right, like, if I get this man a job, he gonna execute, right? I like those guys, okay? So basically, in a nutshell, what we have here is a framework of a peace agreement. We're going to see if it really holds up. Chances are it's probably not, but I'm optimistic, right? I am not going to poo-poo it, right? And I think that we should all be hoping for it, because honestly, in my lifetime, right, I really want to see a habitable Gaza, right? Like, it's a beautiful piece of real estate. It's beautiful. It's beautiful land, right? Seaside, right? The Mediterranean, like, it got potential. Okay, I see exactly the vision that President Trump was talking about. And it's not a bad vision, it's a good vision. Like, you want the place to be productive, okay? You want the people there to have a good life. They should have a good life. And I think that they can. If they adopt a mentality that some of their neighbors have adopted, their Arab neighbors have adopted, and have said, you know what? We're not going to have a state. Okay, we should just accept being an economic tourist hub, right? Just focus on economics, focus on, commerce and making money instead of, terrorism, okay? Because ultimately at the day, it's best to live peacefully than to live in war. And I think that the Palestinians should accept that. And I think that Israelis should give them an opportunity to accept that, right? To actually have a peaceful and prosperous life. So we'll see, but let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.